The warning lights turned red 3 seconds before the entire control panel exploded in sparks. Dennis threw his arms over his face as smoke filled the cockpit. His cargo ship shuddered violently, metal groaning like a wounded animal. The ice planet below grew larger in the cracked viewport. Spinning wildly as the ship lost all control, he grabbed the emergency lever and pulled hard. Nothing happened. The backup thrusters were dead. The main engine was gone. He was going down whether he liked it or not. The impact threw him against his restraints so hard his ribs screamed. Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. Then everything went still except for the howling wind outside. Dennis hung upside down in his seat, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. He blinked, trying to focus. White. Everything outside was white. Snow whipped past the broken windows in thick sheets. He could barely see 5 feet in front of him. He unbuckled and fell onto the ceiling, which was now the floor. Pain shot through his left shoulder, but he could move everything. That was good enough. He pulled himself toward the cargo hold, stepping over sparking wires and broken equipment. The temperature was already dropping. His breath came out in white puffs. The ship's hull had been torn open in 2 places, letting in the blizzard. He found his emergency kit and pulled out the thermal blanket, wrapping it around his shoulders. The distress beacon blinked weakly on a damaged panel. He hit it a few times until it turned solid red. Active. Someone would pick up the signal eventually. Maybe in a few hours. Maybe in a few days. He needed to stay warm until then. Dennis gathered everything useful he could find. 3 protein ration packs, a medical kit, 2 power cells, a heat lamp with a cracked lens. Not much, but it would have to work. He set up the heat lamp in the corner of the cargo hold where the walls were still intact and sat down to wait. That was when he heard it. A sound so faint, he almost missed it under the screaming wind. A chirp, high-pitched and desperate. He stood up, listening. There it was again, coming from outside. Dennis pulled his thermal blanket tighter and moved toward the tear in the hull. The wind hit him like a fist, cold enough to burn his skin. He squinted against the driving snow and saw nothing but white. The chirping came again, closer now. Weak and getting weaker, he climbed through the torn metal, boots crunching in deep snow. The blizzard was so thick he could barely see his own hands. He moved toward the sound, one careful step at a time. Then he saw them point 2 tiny creatures huddled against a rock formation, barely visible under a coating of snow. They were the size of small cats, covered in pure white scales that were turning blue at the edges. Their wings were folded tight against their bodies, too frozen to move. Long necks drooped. Small heads rested on the ground. Dragon hatchlings. Dennis had seen pictures in the cargo manifests. Dragons were dangerous. Apex predators. The galaxy had laws about them. Kill on sight. They grew into massive creatures that could tear apart ships and destroy colonies. Everyone knew that. These 2 were dying. One of them opened its eyes, just a slit. That was pale blue, almost white. It looked at him and made that chirping sound again. Weaker this time. Dennis knelt in the snow. His hands were already numb. The hatchlings were ice cold to the touch, their scales rough and dry. They did not pull away when he picked them up. They did not have the strength. He tucked them inside his thermal blanket against his chest. They were so light, fragile. Their small hearts beat rapidly against his ribs. The wind pushed him sideways as he stumbled back toward the ship. Snow got his eyes. He fell once, catching himself with one hand while keeping the other wrapped around the hatchlings. They made no sound now. Back inside the cargo hold, he sealed the tear as best he could with a piece of torn metal and emergency foam. It would not hold forever, but it cut the wind. He set the hatchlings down near the heat lamp and checked them. Both were barely breathing. Their scales had turned from blue to almost gray. Ice crystals clung to their tiny claws. Dennis worked fast. He wrapped them in a spare shirt, rubbing their scales gently to warm them. He cranked the heat lamp to maximum, even though it would drain the power cell faster. He did not care. They needed warmth now. For an hour, he sat there, keeping them close to the lamp, warming them with his hands. Slowly, the gray faded. The blue lightened. Their breathing became steadier. One of the hatchlings opened both eyes and looked up at him. It chirped, soft and questioning. Dennis smiled despite everything. Despite the crash, despite the cold, despite the fact that he was stranded on an ice planet with two creatures that the entire galaxy would want dead. "I know," he said quietly. "You're scared." "Me too." The other hatchling stirred, lifting its head. It looked at its sibling, then at Dennis. Both of them crawled closer to him, seeking his warmth that he should have left them. That was the smart thing, the safe thing. When rescue came, having dragons on board would cause problems. Big problems, but he could not do it. He could not walk away from something so small and helpless. The distress beacon blinked steadily in the corner. Help was coming, and when it did, Dennis would have to make a choice. Turn over the hatchlings and watch them die, or protect them and become an outlaw. He looked down at the two tiny dragons pressed against his chest, finally warm enough to sleep. The choice was already made. 3 days passed in the frozen wreck. Dennis rationed his protein packs carefully, mixing small amounts with water to create a pace for the hatchlings. They ate slowly at first, uncertain, then hungrily once they realized the food would not hurt them. The bigger of the two, the one who had opened its eyes first, became bolder each day. It explored the cargo hold, sniffing at broken crates and chirping at interesting objects. The smaller one stayed close to Dennis, watching everything with cautious attention. He started calling them Frost and Snow in his mind. Simple names. Frost for the bold one, Snow for the careful one. On the morning of the 4th day, a shadow passed over the broken viewport. Dennis heard the distinct hum of ship engines cutting through the wind. Rescue had arrived. He quickly gathered Frost and Snow, wrapping them in a thermal blanket. "You need to be quiet now," he whispered. "Very quiet." Frost tilted its head, confused. Snow pressed closer to his chest. Dennis found a storage compartment under the floor panels, one that had survived the crash intact. He placed the hatchlings inside with the heat lamp and his spare jacket. "Stay here. Do not make any sounds. I will come back for you." Frost chirped once, unhappy. Dennis touched its snout gently. "Please, trust me." He closed the compartment just as the rescue ship's docking clamps engaged with his hull. Heavy boots clanged on metal. Voices shouted in Gallion, a hissing language that always sounded angry. The cargo hold door tore open. For galleons entered, their scaled faces unreadable behind breath masks. They were tall, reptilian, with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. One of them, wearing captain's insignia, stepped forward. "Human survivor located," the captain said in rough standard. "You are very lucky. This planet kills most who land here." Dennis nodded, trying to look grateful and tired. It was not hard. He was exhausted. "Thank you for coming. My beacon took a while to activate." The captain looked around the wrecked cargo hold. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "You have been here alone? No other survivors?" "Just me. Solo. I was running supplies to the outer colonies when my engine failed." One of the crew members moved deeper into the cargo hold, scanning the area with a handheld device. Dennis tried not to tense. The compartment where Frost and Snow hid was shielded, designed to protect sensitive cargo from radiation. It should block basic scans. The crew member moved past the hidden compartment without stopping. Dennis let out a slow breath. "Gather your belongings," the captain said. "We depart in 10 minutes. This storm is getting worse." Dennis collected his emergency kit and what was left of his supplies. He made sure to step near the hidden compartment, listening. No sound came from inside. Good. The hatchlings understood. The galleon ship was military surplus, converted for merchant use. Cramped and efficient. They gave Dennis a small cabin and basic medical attention for his cuts and bruises. The ship lifted off within minutes, fighting through the blizzard before breaking into the calm black of space. Dennis sat on the narrow bunk, staring at the wall. Frost and Snow were still in the wreck, still in that compartment. Alone, he stood up and walked to the door. Locked from the outside. He was not a prisoner, but he was not exactly free either. Standard procedure for rescue situations. They would release him once they reached the nearest station. Hours crawled by. Dennis paced the small cabin, mind racing. He needed to get back to his ship before they salvaged it. He needed those hatchlings that a knock on the door made him jump. It opened to reveal the galleon captain, his expression grim. "We have a problem," Human. Dennis kept his face neutral. What kind of problem? My crew detected organic readings in your cargo hold. Small. Warm-blooded. At first we thought it was equipment malfunction. The captain stepped closer. But the readings are consistent. 2 life forms. Hidden in a shielded compartment. Dennis said nothing. You know what I think? The captain's eyes narrowed. I think you found something on that planet. Something you were hiding. I was alone, Dennis said firmly. Check the scans again. Your equipment is old. Probably picking up residual heat signatures from my emergency lamp. The captain studied him for a long moment. Perhaps. But when we dock at Waypoint Station Gamma, security will perform a full inspection. If you're hiding something illegal, they will find it. He left without another word. The door locked behind him. Dennis sat down hard on the bunk. Station Gamma. That was 2 days away. 2 days to figure out how to get frost and snow off his ship before security found them. That he closed his eyes, thinking. The galleons would salvage his ship, tow it to the station. Standard procedure. They would strip it for parts and sell anything valuable. When they opened that compartment, they would find the hatchlings, and then they would kill them. Dennis had seen the laws. Read the treaties. Dragons were classified as galactic threats. No trial, no questions, just elimination. That he could not let that happen. That night, while the galleon crew slept, Dennis worked on the door lock using a piece of wire from his emergency kit. It took 3 hours, but the lock finally clicked open. He moved through the dark corridors, avoiding the night shift crew. The cargo bay was at the ship's rear. His wrecked vessel sat there, clamped to the floor, surrounded by salvage equipment. Dennis climbed through the torn hull, moving by memory in the darkness. He found a hidden compartment and opened it. 2 pairs of pale eyes stared up at him in the dark. Frost chirped softly, relieved. Snow climbed out immediately, pressing against Dennis's leg. Come on, he whispered. We are leaving. He had no plan beyond this moment. No idea where to go or how to escape. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty, that he would not let these 2 die. Not while he still breathed. Waypoint Station Gamma floated against the stars like a giant metal wheel. Ships of every size docked along its outer ring, traders and travelers from 100 different worlds. Dennis watched it grow larger through the viewport, his stomach tight with worry. Frost and snow were hidden under his jacket, curled against his chest. They had stayed perfectly still for the last hour, somehow understanding the danger. Their small bodies were warm against his skin, hearts beating fast. The galleon ship docked with a heavy clang. The captain appeared in the corridor, gesturing for Dennis to follow. Station security will want to speak with you. Standard procedure for crash survivors. Dennis nodded, keeping his arms crossed casually over his chest. The hatchlings shifted slightly. He coughed to cover the sound. They walked through the docking tunnel into the station proper. The main corridor was crowded with beings of every species. Tall insectoid Van, stocky gray-skinned Horvan, elegant floating whispers that communicated through light patterns. And humans. Dennis spotted 3 humans in the crowd, which made him feel slightly better. Station security waited at the checkpoint. A Ven officer with black compound eyes scanned Dennis with a handheld device. Name and purpose of visit. Dennis Cowell. Crash survivor. Just passing through until I can arrange transport. The device beeped. The officer looked at the reading, then at the galleon captain. The report mentions unusual organic signatures detected on the wreck. Equipment malfunction, the captain said, but his tone was uncertain. The Ven officer stepped closer to Dennis. Raise your arms, please. Dennis's mind raced. If he raised his arms, the hatchlings would be visible. If he refused, they would detain him. Either way, frost and snow would be discovered. A voice cut through the tension. Officer Quinn, there you are. I have been looking everywhere for you. A human woman pushed through the crowd. She wore a white coat marked with scientific insignia and carried a data pad. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. Dr. Halloway, the Ven officer said, antennae twitching with annoyance. I am conducting an inspection. I can see that. But this man is scheduled for a medical evaluation in my lab. Crash survivors often have internal injuries that do not show on surface scans. She looked at Dennis with a meaningful stare. You must come with me immediately. Dennis caught on fast. Yes, I have been feeling dizzy, nauseous. The VIN officer hesitated. The inspection is protocol. So, is medical treatment, Dr. Holloway said firmly. Unless you want to explain to the station commander why you delayed critical care. She tapped her data pad. I've already logged him into my system. He is my patient now. Officer Quinn clicked his mandibles in frustration, but stepped back. Very well, but I will need to inspect the wreckage thoroughly. Of course, Dr. Holloway said smoothly. She took Dennis by the arm and steered him away from security. Come along. Let's get you examined. They walked quickly through several corridors, turning corners until the security checkpoint was far behind. Dr. Holloway pulled Dennis into a small medical lab and locked the door. Let me see them, she said quietly. Dennis hesitated. See what? The dragons. I know what you are hiding. She gestured to her scanner. My equipment is better than station security's. I detected 2 small heat signatures under your clothing the moment you walked past me. Dennis backed toward the door. I do not know what you mean. Dr. Holloway sighed. Please, I am trying to help you. If I wanted them dead, I would have let Officer Quinn find them. Slowly, Dennis opened his jacket. Frost and snow blinked in the sudden light, their white scales gleaming. They chirped softly, looking around the new environment with curiosity. Dr. Holloway's breath caught. Albino twins. I have never seen them in person. They are beautiful. You have seen dragons before. In my research, I've spent 10 years studying them. She pulled up files on her data pad, showing images of dragons in various stages of growth. Most of what the galaxy believes about dragons is propaganda. They are not mindless killers. They are intelligent, telepathic, peaceful and less threatened. Dennis stared at the images. Adult dragons were massive, with wingspans that could cover a building. But in the pictures, they stood calmly beside other beings, their eyes bright with awareness. Then why does everyone want them dead? Control, Dr. Holloway said simply. Dragons cannot be controlled. They bond with individuals who show genuine compassion, not with governments or militaries. The Galactic Council tried to weaponize them centuries ago. The dragons refused, so the Council declared them dangerous and began hunting them to extinction. She turned to Frost and Snow, who watched her with tilted heads. These 2 will not survive here. Station security will find them eventually. But there is a place they can go. A sanctuary. Where? Dr. Holloway pulled up coordinates on her data pad. It is called Haven's Edge, hidden in the Veil Nebula. People who protect dragons live there. Humans, mostly. Some other species who see the truth. Dennis looked at the coordinates, memorizing them. How do I get there? I will forge travel documents for you. Make it look like you are heading to the outer colonies for work. She worked on her pad, fingers flying across the screen. You will need to avoid council patrols. Stay off main routes. It will take 3 weeks at least. A chime sounded. Dr. Holloway checked her screen and swore softly. Officer Quinn just sent a priority message to the Galactic Council. The galleon captain reported a possible dragon sighting. Dennis felt his blood run cold. How long do we have? Maybe a day before council enforcers arrive. You need to leave now. She handed him a data chip. These documents will get you through the checkpoint. There is a transport leaving in 2 hours for the frontier. Be on it. She walked to a storage cabinet and pulled out supplies. Medical kits, protein packs, a stronger heat lamp for the hatchlings. They're growing fast. They will need more food soon. Dennis took the supplies, overwhelmed. Why are you helping me? Dr. Holloway smiled sadly. Because someone helped me once when I found my first dragon. She did not survive, but maybe these 2 will. She touched Frost's head gently. The hatchling leaned into her hand. Get them to Haven's Edge. Show the galaxy what dragons really are. Dennis left the lab 20 minutes later with new documents, supplies, and a destination. Frost and Snow stayed quiet under his jacket as he moved through the station toward the departure bays. Behind him, Officer Quinn was searching the medical lab. Ahead, Council ships were already jumping into nearby systems. The race had begun. The transport ship was a cramped freighter hauling mining equipment to the frontier colonies. Dennis paid cash for passage and kept to his assigned cabin, speaking to no one. Frost and Snow were growing bigger every day, now the size of medium dogs. Hiding them was becoming harder. He fed them in secret, watched them develop with amazement. Frost's scales had started showing faint silver patterns along the edges. Snow's eyes had deepened to a crystalline blue. They were becoming more active, more curious, testing their wings in the small cabin space. And something else was happening. Something Dennis did not fully understand. Sometimes, when he looked at Frost, he felt emotions that were not his own. Curiosity, excitement, hunger, like whispers in the back of his mind. Snow's feelings were different. Caution, affection, awareness, they were in his head somehow. And he was in theirs 0.2 weeks into the journey. The transport made a fuel stop at a dusty orbital station called Broken Rock. Dennis stayed in his cabin, but Frost had other ideas. The hatchling pushed against the door, chirping insistently. No, Dennis said firmly. Too dangerous. Frost sent him a feeling. Trapped. Restless. Need to move. Dennis rubbed his face. The hatchlings needed exercise. They had been cooped up too long. Fine, but just for a few minutes. And you both stay close. He waited until the station's night cycle, when most travelers were sleeping. The cargo bay was empty, filled with crates and equipment. Dennis let Frost and Snow out, watching as they stretched their wings and bounded between the containers. Frost climbed to the top of a tall crate, spreading its wings experimentally. They were still too small for flight, but growing stronger. Snow practiced pouncing on shadows, its movements graceful and precise. Dennis smiled despite his worry. They looked happy. Freed out a sound made him freeze. Footsteps, heavy boots on metal grating. He grabbed both hatchlings and ducked behind a large container just as someone entered the cargo bay. Dennis peered around the edge and saw a human man in worn armor, scanning the area with a professional eye. A bounty hunter. The man's name was Reese, according to the patch on his shoulder. He carried weapons openly, which meant the station allowed it. His scanner swept the cargo bay slowly. Dennis held his breath. Frost and Snow pressed against him, sensing the danger. Their emotions flooded his mind. Fear, confusion, trust that Dennis would protect them. The scanner beeped. Reese turned toward their hiding spot. I know you are in here, Reese called out. Thermal signatures do not lie. Two small life forms, non-human. Dragon-sized. Dennis stood up slowly, keeping the hatchlings behind him. I do not know what you are talking about. Reese laughed. Sure you do not. There's a bounty on dragon sightings. 5,000 credits for information. 50,000 for live specimens. He drew a weapon, not pointing it directly at Dennis, but making the threat clear. Hand them over, and I will let you walk away. No, no. Reese's eyebrows rose. You are willing to die for 2 animals? They are not animals. Frost growled, a sound that was small now, but promised future danger. Snow moved closer to Dennis's leg, watching Reese with calculating eyes. Reese activated a comm device. Station security, I have a situation in Cargo Bay 3. Dennis's mind raced. Security would arrive in minutes. They would take Frost and Snow. He had to move. Had to run. Frost sent him an image. The ship's engine room. Wires. Energy. Dennis did not question it. He ran. Reese fired, but the shot went wide as Dennis ducked behind crates. Frost and Snow ran with him, their legs surprisingly fast. They reached a maintenance corridor and climbed through, moving deeper into the station's infrastructure. Behind them, Reese shouted orders. More footsteps joined the chase. Station security had arrived. Dennis pulled open a panel leading to the lower levels. They dropped down into the engineering section, landing among massive fuel processors and power conduits. The air was hot and smelled like ozone. Frost moved to a control panel, placing its claws on the exposed wiring. The hatchling closed its eyes, concentrating that a pulse of electromagnetic energy burst from the panel, spreading through the station's power grid. Lights flickered. Systems beeped in alarm. The security scanners went dark. Dennis stared. How did you do that? Frost sent him a feeling. Instinct. Natural ability. Snow moved to another panel and touched it. This time, Dennis felt something different. A presence in his mind, expanding outward. Reaching. Touching other minds. Above them, In the cargo bay, Reese stopped running. His eyes glazed over. He turned in the wrong direction, confused, chasing a phantom signal that Snow projected into his mind. "You can create illusions," Dennis whispered. Snow looked up at him with those crystalline eyes and sent him a single emotion. Yes. They climbed back through the maintenance tunnels while security searched the wrong sections. Frost's EMP had disabled the tracking systems. Snow's telepathic illusion kept the hunters looking in empty corridors. Dennis made it back to the transport ship and locked himself in his cabin. The freighter departed 20 minutes later, jumping to hyperspace before station security could organize a proper search. He sat on the bunk, heart pounding, while Frost and Snow curled up beside him. They were not just intelligent. They were powerful. Even as hatchlings, they could manipulate energy and minds. What would they become as adults? And more importantly, what did it mean that they trusted him completely? Dennis pulled up the coordinates for Haven's Edge on his datapad. Still 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to avoid more bounty hunters, council patrols, and anyone else who wanted the hatchlings dead. Frost rested its head on his leg, exhausted from using its abilities. Snow was already asleep, breathing softly. Dennis stroked their scales gently. "We're going to make it," he promised. "All 3 of us." Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as the ship raced deeper into uncharted space. Somewhere ahead, in a nebula that hid more than stars, Sanctuary waited if they could survive long enough to reach it. The Veil Nebula appeared on the viewport like a vast cloud of purple and blue gas, shot through with lightning-like energy streams. Most ships avoided it. Navigation was nearly impossible inside. Sensors went haywire. Communication systems failed, perfect for hiding. Dennis followed the coordinates Dr. Halloway had given him, flying blind through the swirling clouds. Frost and Snow sat in the co-pilot's seats, now nearly the size of large dogs. Their wings had grown strong enough for short gliding. Their scales gleamed with health. More importantly, their connection with Dennis had deepened. He could feel their thoughts clearly now, understood their needs without words. They guided him through the nebula, their natural senses reading the energy patterns that his instruments could not. After 3 hours of careful navigation, a planet appeared. Green and blue. Peaceful. Hidden in the heart of the nebula where scanners could not reach. Haven's Edge. Dennis landed at the coordinates, setting down in a clearing surrounded by massive trees. The air outside was fresh and warm. He opened the cargo door, and Frost and Snow bounded out immediately, stretching their wings and exploring this new world that a group of people emerged from the tree line. Humans, mostly, but also a few other species. They were armed, but not threatening. Watching the hatchlings with wonder rather than fear, an elderly human woman stepped forward. She was small and thin, with white hair and bright eyes that missed nothing. Despite her age, she moved with strength and purpose. "Welcome to Haven's Edge," she said. "I am Ruth, and you must be Dennis. How did you know?" Ruth smiled. "Dr. Halloway sent word 3 weeks ago. We have been watching for you." She looked past him at Frost and Snow, who were investigating a flowering bush. "Albino twins. The first I have seen in 40 years. You have been here that long. Longer. I founded this place when the council declared open season on dragons. Someone had to protect them." She gestured toward the trees. "Kulme, there is much to show you." Dennis followed her along a winding path. Frost and Snow walked beside him, their heads turning constantly to take in the new sights. The forest opened into a valley, and Dennis stopped, breathless. Dragons. Dozens of them. Some lounged in the sun, their scales shimmering in every color imaginable. Others flew overhead, their massive wings creating shadows that swept across the ground. Young ones played in a stream, while adults watched protectively. And among them, humans and other beings lived in harmony, working together, communicating through touch and telepathy. "This is impossible," Dennis whispered. "This is truth," Ruth corrected. "What the galaxy believes about dragons is the lie. They are not monsters. They are partners, teachers, friends." She pointed to a massive red dragon near the stream. "That is Ember. She has been with me for 38 years. She saved my life when my research ship crashed on a hostile world. I was dying, and she bonded with me, sharing her strength until rescue came. A young human man approached, a green dragon the size of a horse walking beside him. Ruth, the Council fleet has been detected at the nebula's edge. They are searching. Ruth's expression hardened. How many ships? 17, led by Admiral Cross. He is determined to find us this time. Dennis felt cold. They followed me. No, Ruth said firmly. They have been searching for years. You just gave them extra motivation. She looked at the gathered dragons and their human partners. We always knew this day might come. The Council cannot tolerate proof that they lied about dragons. She led Dennis to a large building at the valley center. Inside, screens showed maps, data files, and recorded testimonies. Years of evidence. We have documented everything, Ruth explained. Proof that dragons are sentient, intelligent, peaceful. Medical scans showing their telepathic abilities. Historical records from before the Council banned them. Testimonies from people like you who bonded with dragons. What good is proof if no one will listen? Someone will listen. We just need the right moment. Ruth activated a communication system. The Galactic Assembly meets in 2 weeks. Representatives from every member world. If we can present our evidence there, bypass the Council's control, we might change everything. The Council will kill us before we get that chance. Not if we make the truth too public to hide. Ruth pulled up a broadcast protocol. We can stream our evidence to every ship, every station, every colony. Let people see dragons for what they really are. Let them see you with frost and snow. Dennis looked at the hatchlings. They sat together near his feet, watching the adults with fascination. So young, so trusting. If we do this, they will come after us with everything. Yes, Ruth agreed. But if we do nothing, they win. Dragons disappear forever. The galaxy lives with the Council's lies. Frost sent Dennis an emotion. Determination. A sense that this was right. Important. Snow added her own feeling. Trust. Whatever Dennis decided, they would stand with him. Dennis took a breath. What do you need me to do? Ruth smiled. Tell your story. Show the galaxy what happened. A human who found dying hatchlings and chose to save them instead of following orders. It is simple, powerful, true. Over the next week, they prepared. Dennis recorded his testimony. The crash, finding frost and snow, the rescue, the station, the chase, all of it. Other humans share their stories too. Bonds formed, lives saved, partnerships that lasted decades. The dragons themselves participated, allowing scans that proved their intelligence, demonstrated their abilities, showed their gentle nature. Frost and snow grew larger each day, feeding on the planet's rich ecosystem. They played with other young dragons, learning from the adults. But every night, they returned to Dennis, curling up beside him. The bond was unbreakable now. He was theirs. They were his dot on the 8th day. The sensors detected the Council fleet entering the nebula. 17 warships, armed and ready to destroy anything they found. Ruth activated the broadcast system. It is time. Show them the truth. Dennis stood before the camera with frost and snow at his side. Behind him, the valley full of dragons and their human partners waited. The transmission began, reaching across the galaxy, and Dennis started to speak. Dennis's hands shook as the broadcast went live, but his voice stayed steady. Behind him, frost and snow sat quietly, their white scales gleaming in the light. The camera captured everything. My name is Dennis Cowell. I'm a cargo hauler. 3 weeks ago, I crashed on an ice planet during a blizzard. I found 2 dragon hatchlings freezing to death. Everyone says dragons are monsters, killers. But all I saw were 2 helpless babies who needed help. He told the whole story. Simple words. No fancy speeches. Just the truth. He showed the scans Dr. Holloway had made. The medical records proving frost and snow's intelligence. The telepathic bonds that formed naturally through compassion. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. Ships received it. Stations displayed it. Home screens lit up with images of dragons living peacefully beside humans. Admiral Cross watched from his command ship at the nebula's edge, his face twisted with rage. "Cut that transmission. Jam their signal." "We cannot, sir," his communications officer reported. "They are broadcasting on every frequency, bouncing the signal through relay satellites. By the time we shut down one, they activate another, then find their location and destroy them. Sir, the broadcast is reaching civilian populations. Millions have already seen it. If we attack now, it will confirm everything they are saying." Cross slammed his fist on the console. "Ready weapons. Prepare to advance into the nebula." But something was happening across his fleet. Crew members watched the broadcast on personal devices, saw dragons playing with human children, heard testimonies from people who had lived peacefully with dragons for years. Doubt spread like wildfire, but on Haven's Edge, Ruth monitored the incoming signals. "It is working. We're getting responses from across the assembly. Representatives are calling for an emergency session." Dennis continued his broadcast, now showing Frost and Snow interacting with other dragons. The hatchlings demonstrated their abilities. Frost generated a small ball of electromagnetic energy, harmless but controlled. Snow projected gentle images into the minds of watching humans, showing them memories of kindness and warmth. "They are not weapons," Dennis said to the camera. "They're living beings who feel, think, and choose. They bond with those who show them compassion. Is that not what we should value? Is that not what makes life precious?" An alert sounded. The Council fleet was moving, entering the nebula despite the navigation hazards. Ruth activated the sanctuary's defenses. Energy shields, automated warning systems. Nothing that could stop 17 warships, but enough to buy time. The dragons felt the threat. The adult dragons gathered, their telepathic voices joining together. Frost and Snow added their small voices to the chorus, and Dennis felt it through their bond. Unity, protection, family. Admiral Cross's ship broke through the nebula clouds, weapons armed and targeting the valley below. "Admiral, we are receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Assembly," his communications officer said urgently. "Ambassador Okoye is ordering you to stand down." "I take orders from the Council, not from Okoye." "Sir, the Assembly is overriding the Council. They're calling for an immediate vote on dragon sentient status. Ambassador Okoye says if you fire on Haven's Edge before the vote completes, you will be charged with genocide." Cross hesitated. He had the firepower to destroy the sanctuary. But if the Assembly was watching, if billions across the galaxy were watching, attacking now would make him a war criminal. On planets across the galaxy, the Assembly vote began. Representatives saw the broadcasts, heard the testimonies, watched as Frost and Snow communicated clearly with Dennis, showing intelligence and emotion. The vote was close. Some representatives still believed the old propaganda, but others saw the truth, saw what decades of lies had hidden. The vote passed by 3 votes. Dragons were granted provisional sentient status, immediate protection under galactic law. Hunting them was now classified as murder. Admiral Cross received the order to withdraw. His face turned purple with rage, but he had no choice. To attack now would be to violate direct Assembly orders. He could not win that fight. "All ships, retreat to the nebula's edge. Hold position." The fleet withdrew, weapons powering down. But Cross's final words carried a promise. "This is not over. They will slip, make a mistake. And when they do, I will be waiting." On Haven's Edge, cheers erupted. Dragons and humans celebrated together. Frost and Snow bounded around Dennis, their joy flooding through the bond. Ruth approached Dennis, her eyes wet with tears. "You did it. You showed them the truth." "We did it," Dennis corrected. "All of us." Over the following weeks, the galaxy changed. Not completely, not everywhere, but enough. Sanctuaries like Haven's Edge received official recognition. Researchers began studying dragon-human bonds openly. People who had hidden their dragon partners for years stepped into the light. There was resistance. The Council fought the new laws. Admiral Cross made good on his promise to watch for mistakes. But the truth was out now, and truth was harder to kill than dragons. Dennis stayed at Haven's Edge. He had no reason to leave. His life as a cargo hauler felt like a distant memory. This was home now. Frost and snow grew into magnificent adults over the next 2 years. Their white scales turned silver and platinum, shot through with patterns like frost on glass. They could fly for hours without tiring, generate electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disable ships, project telepathic illusions that could fool an entire crowd. But mostly, they stayed with Dennis, hunting together, exploring the valley, resting in the sun while he told them stories about his old life hauling cargo through the stars. Other humans came to Haven's Edge, hoping to bond with dragons. Dennis helped teach them, showed them how to open their minds, how to offer compassion without expecting control. Not everyone succeeded. Dragons chose their partners carefully, but those who formed bonds discovered what Dennis had learned on that frozen planet in the blizzard. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness could change everything, could save 2 lives, could challenge an empire of lies, could prove that compassion was stronger than fear. Dennis stood on a hill overlooking the valley, watching frost and snow fly together through the evening sky. Their telepathic voices touched his mind, warm and content that he smiled. This was exactly where he belonged.